Georgia's state representative.
Joe Biden has had 47 years to produce results, but he's been all talk and no action, just like so many of the Democrats who've been making promises to the black voters for decades. We've been their captive audience. When President Trump sought to earn the black vote, the Democratic Party leaders went crazy.
We welcome now Representative Jones to Bloomberg. Thank you so much, Mr. Representative, for being with us. Let me ask at the outset, what led you to this decision? And specifically, was this specific to Donald Trump, the man, and what he stands for, what he does? Or is it broader than that? Because the indictment you're leveling goes beyond Joe Biden. It seems to go to the Democratic Party, which you've been, I think, with your entire life.
Well, first of all, common sense. Secondly, the Democratic Party's track record. And thirdly, what Donald Trump has done for African Americans far exceed in the past 3.5 years than what Democrats have done for African Americans in the past 50 years. As I said earlier, we've been a captive audience. They didn't need to earn our vote, earn our support. When they get elected, they throw blacks off the bus. And that day has come to an end, and we're not going to tolerate that anymore. And myself and others are going to be very vocal about the bigotry and the Marxism and the socialism that the Democratic Party embraces now.
Well, that suggests maybe you're going to switch parties. Are you thinking about doing that?
Well, I didn't leave the party left me. I'm going to remain Vernon Jones. I was born with traditional values, hard work, believing in God, not relying on the government, realizing that the government, too much government intervention can hurt you, ruin your life, actually. But working hard for for what I want, what I believe in is important to me. I support President Trump because I can tell you specifically, with historical black colleges being funded at the level that President Trump has, and me being a proud graduate of North Carolina Central University, that made a difference to many African Americans. There are about 48 historical black colleges throughout the country. They've been the incubator of many of these scholars in arts and science and math and religion and in politics. And so I support black colleges, and President Trump support historical black colleges. In terms of prison reform, it's no secret. Joe Biden wrote the crime bill that incarcerated masses of black people, destroyed their families, destroyed literally an entire generation. But it was Donald Trump who came in just 3.5 years, he got Congress with his backing to support and pass the First Step Act, which is allowing African Americans and brown Americans who were traditionally locked up and the key thrown away to come back, reunite their families, be productive, get some of the jobs that President Trump has created. And speaking of that, prior to the pandemic, African American employment was at a record low. This economy was humming. I'll give President Obama and the mixed Congress, which included Republican House, they stemmed the tide. They stopped the bleeding of the economy when it was going down. However, when President Trump came in, he put this economy on steroids with that tax cut. You started seeing jobs being created, investments coming in from offshores. People started to start new businesses. Many of them are black businesses. They started to grow the economy. They started to grow our way out of a deficit and not spend in tax to try to deal with the deficit. So this president has been strong. He's been as solid as Arabian Mountain in terms of his policies and his leadership. And we support that.
Representative Jones, let me ask a question that a viewer actually just wrote into me to ask you, and I'm going to ask it a little bit differently, but basically, how was the African American community reacted to your decision to back Donald Trump?
Well, many of them who've been captive audience, who've just been brainwashed and browbeat over decades, they can't quite see the light yet. Because why? Just like Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. And that is still embedded in many African American minds. Fortunately, myself and many others, and a growing number, have realized that this is a hoax, that we've been on a plantation. They make promises to us, but they don't follow through on their promises. And I can tell you this, many, many more African Americans support me. They like what I have to say. They agree with what I have to say. But they don't want to be browbeat by the liberal media. They don't want agent provocateurs that are being used to attack them and call them sellouts and call them Uncle Toms. So guess what? This is a high-tech case of lynching of the black vote through voter suppression, through intimidation. And when you look at many whites want to vote for Donald Trump, and they are going to vote for Donald Trump, but the liberal media want them to feel like what? That they are racist if they do so. And so don't leave out the liberal media how they are an extension of the Democratic Party. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that none of those liberal networks, CNN and MSNBC and any others, have had me on. They want to put African Americans on that are well behaved, that carry out their narrative. And so when I did have opportunity to be on MSNBC, it was a strange thing to show you the bigotry throughout the network, that I was telling them my position on why I support Donald Trump, just like I'm saying here now. But then the reporter says to me, well, how much is the Trump organization paying you? Well, that's an insult. So I can't have an independent thought. I've been in this business for 30 years. Hell, I don't know who I can vote for or who I want to vote for.
Right.
That right there shows you the bigotry. And that's why I remain a Democrat, because I want to continue to pull that white Ku Klux Klan, literally, sheet of bigotry off of the Democratic Party, and certainly the liberal networks.
Okay, the last thing I want to do is get into a debate about liberal media versus non-liberal media. I've been in the media for a while now, and we could go on and on about that, but I do want to ask you about this.
Let's say some in the liberal media.
Well, there are some people in the media who are left of center. There are some right of center as well. But let's leave that go for a moment, if we could. I want to bring in just another question, because something you addressed was the question of defunding the police and the dangers of defunding the police. Something, by the way, Joe Biden has not said he would do, but the risks of doing that. On the other hand, there's also a risk on the other side of African-American males, particularly. We just saw it in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And Doc Rivers, the Clippers coach, after the game last night, had this to say about defunding the police.
My dad was a cop. I believe in good cops. We're not trying to defund the police and take all their money away. We're trying to get them to protect us, just like they protect everybody else. And how dare the Republicans talk about fear? We're the ones that need to be scared.
So, this is what I'm curious about. It seems to me that people tend to talk about all one side or all the others. There are two sides that need to come together here, aren't they? That we both need to protect the streets and protect people on the streets by our police, and at the same time, protect our citizens from abuse.
Well, here's my position. I'm in a very unique position. I am black. I've run one of the largest police departments in the country, and I've had to deal with shootings on both sides, where individual officers were involved in shootings and where officers were killed in shootings. There's no win situation. I've experienced the pain seeing those mothers and fathers and those children dealing with deaths, again, on both sides. But we have to respect the law. If we don't have law and order, we'll have a chaotic community. We'll have what's going on right now in Portland, where those liberal Democrats, they don't understand how important it is to support your law enforcement officers, but they want that to happen. These are not protesters, these are rioters. And I believe every police officer, any police officer who acts unbecoming, that police officer should be dealt with. But to paint a broad brush as to defunding the police departments, they are being defunded. It was a black female in Seattle, Washington, police chief, who resigned recently. Why? Because what the Seattle local liberal leadership, Democrats, did when they defunded the police department. Let me tell you, police need more funding. Many people don't know this. Police officers only go through a psychological examination when they're being hired. When you've been on the road 5, 15, 20 years, and you haven't been evaluated in terms of where you are mentally, if you're burned out or not, you don't know how the officer may react under certain situations. We need more money to fund that. When you start talking about non-lethal use of force, you need more money for new technology like the bowler wrap and some others. So, and police training and de-escalation, there's very limited training in that. There needs to be more money for that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's a discussion we really need to have and continue to have in this country, and we really appreciate your being here. It's very valuable to have your point of view. He is Vernon Jones. He is Georgia State Representative. Still ahead.